There we go. So, you were a nurse over in Berlin.
I was a registered nurse, a part of the Armed Forces Nurses Corps.
Okay. What kind of people, sick people did you see? I mean, did you see Germans or only Americans?
Mostly Americans, because it was a hospital that had been taken over. What's the word I want?
Commandeer.
Yes. It was a Krankenhaus. Krankenhaus. Yeah.
Krankenhaus. House. H-A-U-S.
Genau. Yeah. So, how big was the hospital?
Oh, I suppose 200 beds.
How many stories?
3 maybe.
Were you like a head nurse? Did you work with Germans also?
Yes, because we didn't have enough American nurses over there to staff that hospital.
Were the German nurses skilled? Were they good?
Yes, and a good many of them had a certain amount of English.
Yeah.
So there was an opportunity for communication.
So, did you see what kind of injuries were the troops coming in with?
Well, by the time I went there, the war was pretty much over. It was not in Berlin. They were still mopping up down around the edges and so on.
But still.
But some of the young men had lost an arm, and some of them had lost a leg, and that wasn't pleasant.
I'm sure it wasn't. Did this happen in accidents, or was it
No, that
battlefield?
was battle.
So Americans, like family, was even occupying Germany before the end of the war. Like they were really starting to create a plan to fix Germany, even before it was done necessarily. Huh. I didn't know that. Can you kind of see what I'm pointing at?
Well, I don't think they went in till after the war was over. The families.
Okay, but you saw casualties. You were seeing people that were injured, and they were missing limbs.
Not many.
Okay.
That's a long time ago.
I know.
And my head is full.
Tell Nick about the household help that you had.
Yes. You told me one of them was
Gertrude.
Tell me about Gertrude. Who was she? How old was she?
Well, she was probably 20, 25, and she was a concert pianist.
Mm-hmm.
Her father was either dead or away, and she took this job to support her mother.
And she was hired help for your house.
She was hired help.
The Broder house, right?
She didn't know doodly squat about dusting or sweeping. The lady who worked in the kitchen would just sort of nod her head. And I would have to show Gertrude, this and this and this. But then when we had people in for dinner, she would put on the one nice dress she had, I guess, and she would play for us.
And you would give her sugar or plums or $10 or something?
Whatever. We'd send a basket of the food that was, there were always things left over.
Yeah.
And fruit and so on. We got along fine.
So, this was the house at Broder Strasse. Okay, so you had a person that worked in the kitchen and Gertrude.
And somebody else, too.
And the yard man.
Yeah.
Who picked up all the apples.
So they cleaned those up, huh?
Well, and when we realized how big that backyard was and how many apples there were out there, I told, I don't know, not Gertrude, the housekeeper or the yard man, to tell them, the people who were living around there, that for every basket full of apples, I would give them a bag of sugar.
Yeah.
And they cleaned up that backyard and pruned the trees and I don't know what all.
Why did you have so much help, Mom?
Well, the
Because you didn't really need it, did you?
German people were poor too, Robin. And when the positions that they'd had, the house had been, what's the word I want? Commandeered.
Yes.
And here was the cleaning lady and the yard man and Gertrude. I don't know where she fitted in. She was the pianist. She was supposedly the maid. She didn't know anything more. She didn't know about dusting or sweeping or anything like
Yeah.
that. So we had to teach her that. It worked out all right.
But they needed jobs, and that's why you had all that help. Because you could afford, with the military pay and the food that you got, to help them get back on their feet.
Right.
Is that?
So, did Gertrude have a last name?
What was her last name?
I wasn't there, Mom. I don't know.
But this was the house at 33 Broder Strasse in what month?
Longfitz.
Longfitz. So Longfitz. In what year of 1940? What?
I've been 46, probably 47.
Okay.
Tell them about the Christmas ornaments. The first year that you were there for Christmas, you had no ornaments, remember?
Well, we didn't have many. Somebody that we picked up somewhere maybe.
But then in this next spring, the man came to the house. Do you remember that? You've told us that story?
Oh,
He had a pack on the back and had all of these ornaments, glass blown,
gorgeous things.
and you ordered how many?
Oh, probably 3 or 4 dozen. One of these, 2 of those, and so on.
What? So a German guy came around and was selling. Oh, that's nice. So you bought a bunch of Christmas.
Well, they
ornaments,
would
huh?
do. See, the war was practically over,
Yeah, it was.
and they are trying to get themselves back on their feet.
Yeah.
And evidently, he had a lot of these that had not sold while the war was going on. He began going sort of door to door. And all those apples out there. And I told them, for every basket of apples they picked up, I'd give them 2 or 3, whatever, the bags, of sugar. They cleaned up that backyard and pruned the trees, and raked everything, and left it really nice. Long time ago.
Yeah, you know. I mean, this is something that I've always had an interest in. And while I was in the army, I was in Germany, and you know, I talked to my dad, and he said at one point, you know, our family was over there, and it sparked my interest. And my mother's grandfather recently died, and he was in World War II in the Navy. And I just remember talking to him right before he died, you know, and hearing about his war stories and what he had to say about that era. And these are things that I never want to forget, and I want my kids to know about this. And I
Well,
want,
the
you know,
people who
people's
fought on the
contribution.
ground
Yeah,
have different stories to tell
I know.
from those who fought in the air, shall we say. They weren't fighting. When we got there, the war was over. And we were just trying to rebuild that country.
So, where did you get your food from? The commissary, I take it.
Commissary.
Was it good food or?
Well, it was the same. Came from the United States and was doled out there. You could get so many pounds of sugar a week.
It was rationed. Yeah.
Certain things were rationed.
Cigarettes and coffee and alcohol.
And sugar.
They're still rationed.
Well,
to this day.
alcohol went through the officers' club, NCO, too. Geez, that's a long time ago. I can't remember all this stuff.
You're doing a very good job.
My head is full.
And
Long time.
What about if, you know, when the Germans were systematically trying to take over Berlin so that they could have it for themselves in their sector, and you kept a suitcase with food and clothes for Marshall.
It was like an emergency
In case we
evacuation.
had to
Do you
leave.
remember why? Yeah.
I must have told you all that stuff when I was younger and still remembered.
Yeah, they still have it over there. They call it Non-Combatant Evacuation Operation, and it's called the NEO program. And it's pretty much you have to file your residence. You have to show where you're going to be most of the time. And if something happens, trucks will go around, pick everybody up, airplanes will begin to land, and they'll kick them out the country as soon as they can, get them out, and leave people like me over there to enjoy all the fun.
Clean
I
up
guess.
the joint.
Well,
Clean
I
up
think
the-
that was basically what the
Yeah.
plan was there.
So, Grandma, what were the Germans like? Like, what living conditions did they have, and how did the Russians be mean to them? How were the Russians mean to the Germans?
I have no way of knowing what the Russians.
Did they ever cut off your electricity?
Well, the electricity was controlled at a central point, shall we say.
Yeah.
And you had so many hours, so many days.
But
3
you
hours.
could never tell when that would be. They didn't publish a schedule, so you could really plan. Is that correct?
I don't remember, right? It's a long time ago.
It's alright, Grandma. I'm not upset with you at all. I mean, you're doing a lot better than those other old people out there. They don't have any stories that are worth hearing.
But when we went back to Germany,
When? The Olympics?
what year would that have been?
Probably 95, maybe 96. Maybe before then too, before Daddy got sick.
Yeah,
So maybe 91, 92. Before the Berlin Wall went down.
we went
Jeez.
over there.
Okay.
And we went into Lunkvitz, which was, and somebody recognized us. And he, a big hullabaloo, and he went up and down the street, the stores and all, saying, you know, they're back, they're back. Long time ago.
So he recognized you and he was happy. And the wall was still up at that time.
Well, we got along with them.
Yeah.
And as I say, with that apple orchard out there, and I told them they could please pick up, we didn't want them coming at night. And I just told whoever that for every basket of apples, I'll give them a pound of sugar. Boy, they cleaned up that backyard, pruned the trees. We had no trouble with the natives.
Yeah, neither did I. No, I was there. So older man, I guess, he recognized you after all those years and was, yay. He's happy to see you.
Ran up and down the street, knocking on doors, and people came out. That would have been 10, 12 years after we'd been there.
Oh, 20
More like 20.
at least.
They were glad to see us.
Did you eat dinner with them? What'd you do while you were there?
No, we just walked around and talked to people. Handed out whatever we had brought as little gifts.
Daddy really wanted to see the wall, didn't he?
Wanted to see the wall, the Berlin Wall. There are pictures of that somewhere.
I'd like to see him. I've got his old flight records. I've got a copy of them. Where it shows where he was flying airplanes and how many hours he was getting in Berlin. Do you have any old documentation or anything like that around that you know
I doubt it.
of? Where would it be if you had it?
Who knows? He was actually a paper man.
Who?
Your grandfather.
Yeah.
He had all the credentials to be in the first flight of planes. But he was better at the paperwork. And we always felt it held back some of his promotions. But they'd have a problem over here and he'd be sent over there to straighten that out. and then something else.
So that's a lesson I should take into account, that if I ever get really good at paperwork, to watch out, because it could affect me adversely. I'll think about that. I remember, I started to learn about forms and regulations, and try to be bad at paperwork from now on.
How long have you been in the service now?
5 years. I'm out now. I'm done.
Oh, you're out.
Went to Iraq.
Came home again.
Yeah.
Had enough of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now you're going to college.
Yes, with my GI Bill.
Good.
Yeah.
And where is it you're going?
To Florida State.
Right up here in Tallahassee.
Yeah, that's where I live now.
Imagine that.
I'll show you my driver's license I got.
What does your mother say about you coming so far away?
She doesn't have much to say about it. She's fine.
Florida driver's license.
Yep.
Breeze, Nicholas. Department of Veterans Affairs. Huh. Aren't they fancy now?
Yeah.
And you're still in the Army.
I'm out.
Oh, you're out.
Done.
How long were you in?
5 years.
And now you're going to college.
Yep. They tried to send me to Iraq, but Aunt Robin helped me to keep me from going. They tried to send me again in December, but she helped me out and didn't have to go.
I think you did most of the work.
Nicholas Laurent Breeze. Something or other in Tallahassee.
Something or other. It's a
All
good
right,
area.
read that.
It's a good area. That's something or other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Covers a lot.
Yeah, it does. It does. It's a nice neighborhood.
So you're going up there this year.
Yes.
He's been there a year.
So, how did when did you leave? How did life go on when you left Berlin? Till the time that pretty much Grandpa got out of the Army Air Corps and retired. I mean, where did you go after Berlin?
Well, we were in Savannah.
First we went back to Shreveport.
We went to Shreveport first.
Yep. What were you there for?
What did we do in Shreveport?
I was too young to know. I know Daddy still flew because he would bring his flight lunches back.
Well, he was still in the service then.
Mhm.
He was flying an aircraft.
When would he have had his 20 years in?
When we were in Savannah. We went to Shreveport, then we went to Puerto Rico, then we came back to Shreveport, and then we went to Savannah. And he got his 20 years in Savannah.
And he said, I'm through.
Yeah. Yeah, he did. I guess, from what I hear.
But one of the things he did was I guess shortly after the war, but I guess the first time you were in Shreveport was to close because they were closing lots of military bases. He would go and close out the PX and get rid of or send out all of the extra.
All the stuff that was not government issue. Then they would have sales. That's how I have some of these pictures and things. Some of them didn't sell. The sale would be over and here would be these things left, and some of those wound up here. Your father paid for them, grandfather paid for them. Whatever the going rate was.
So that's one of the things that he did. What did he do in Savannah? At Hunter Air Force Base?
He cleaned up something. I think Savannah had a lot of part-time officers, shall we say. They hadn't had enough experience. They'd been in the reserve or whatever, and now they're on active duty. And the war's over, and they need to get on with the program, and they really didn't know, as far as I know. So he straightened that out. What did we do in Puerto Rico?
I don't know, he still was flying. Because I remember his flight suits. And he brought his roller skates.
Really?
He'd been back to the States and came back. Somebody else up the street had roller skates, and we had borrowed them and learned to skate. And that was just a big, huge deal. And so he went when he was stateside and brought us back roller skates.
Long time ago.
So eventually, what made him decide to retire in Florida? Was this the last place he was?
Well, he had the 20 years in, and Martin Company was coming to Florida,
Yeah.
and he felt that he had something to offer to Martin,
They made it, yeah.
which he obviously did, because he said, he resigned, and he said, I'm going to Florida this week. I said, what are you going to do? He said, I'm going to get a job, which he did, and then we moved on down here.
Here you are today.
All three of the children graduated from Winter Park High School. And I was a member of the Orange County School Board, which desegregated the schools, built 10 new ones by using the same plans instead of hiring a new architect,
Yeah.
and created Valencia Community College.
So you're accomplished. I think so.
I'm finished, is what I
So, the grandpa, from what I understand, he told me in the past when I was a little bitty kid that he used to know other pilots, of course, and some of which dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima.
Could be.
He said one. He
What's
said
his name?
Farabee. Is that his name?
Could be.
Alright.
Rings a bell.
But he flew the grandpa flew a special aircraft called the Peacemaker, which is called the B-36, and its engines were on backwards, and it took a really skilled pilot to fly it because it was such a big aircraft.
Well, he evidently was good at what he did because he did it for years and never had any problems. And then one day he said, I've had enough.
Well, they were going to send us back overseas too.
We'd been to Puerto Rico.
And Marshall was in high school, and they just decided
Nope.
that wasn't.
So did Grandpa have any friends that are still alive that would really know about his flight time and experiences?
I've lost track. For years we'd have Christmas cards. And now I don't get a card from any of them. Do I?
Babe, whoever Babe was.
Walters.
Yeah,
Art and
Baby Do.
Baby Do Walters from the DC area. But I don't hear from them anymore. Do I?
I don't think you had a card this past year, no.
And
So tell me about the breezes. Where do breezes come from?
France originally.
But
I
I see
think.
a lot of them are from Britain, I found.
Well, they came across the Channel. It's not far from France to England. But I suspect the B-R-I-E-S-E is the French word for a light air.
Yeah.
And I suspect when it got into England, breeze.
But so there was other breezes that were foot soldiers in World War II, correct?
Oh, I'm sure there were.
No, that we know of. Like,
Uncle Malcolm and Uncle Norman.
tell me about Uncle Malcolm and Uncle Norman, if you could.
I can't tell you much about either one of them.
You don't keep in touch.
Well, Uncle Norman's dead. He died when I was still at home.
And Malcolm?
Malcolm died he died before Daddy did, so
But
probably
they
in
were
the mid-90s somewhere.
They were overseas. on the ground and so on. And your grandfather was not on the ground.
No, he isn't.
He was safe from all that mess.
So Malcolm and Randall were in the army.
Norman.
Malcolm and Norman were in the army. Do you know what unit?
Malcolm was a master sergeant, wasn't he?
I think so.
So he made a career out of it.
Yes.
20 years. And he married who?
Ruby.
One of the twins. Where was she from?
Mississippi.
Mississippi. And there's some children there.
Frank and Alice and William. Or Bill.
Where do you suppose they are?
Well, Frank was out in Denver, remember? When we went out to Denver, he came and met us at the airport. I don't know where Bill is, but Alice lives right here in Maitland.
Really? What's her last name?
Ide.
Ide. E-I-D? I-D-E.
E-I-D-E.
Good night.
So one of them he got captured by the Germans, right?
That was Malcolm, wasn't it? Never was the same. Your grandfather said. It had been a nice, easygoing kid.
Yeah. Because they were brothers, right?
And he never was the same.
How was he different?
Well, he was no longer an easygoing kid, was he?
No.
No. Everything, nothing was enough. He just felt that he'd given so much, he was entitled to something. And your grandfather was getting promotions and moving up and doing well. And when he came home from
Germany.
the camp, he didn't know what to do with himself, really.
Did he turn into an alcoholic?
I don't think that was the real problem. But he wasn't prepared to have a job, as I remember. But he must have held one.
Well, he stayed in the service. He's put in his 20 years at least.
He made a career after they captured him and he got returned.
Yeah.
Did they hurt him or torture him, you think?
No, not that I know of.
Probably didn't eat so. I'm sure they didn't feed him well.
Germans are known for good cooking.
And they're prisoners, probably. Germany is the people to get captured by nowadays. If you're gonna get captured, don't go to Russia, you know. But so he's got family around here. All right, that's a start. Well, this is, but maybe it's my next stop. Maybe I want to trace down as many breezes as I can. There's a lot in Ohio that I find on the internet.
Really?
Yeah, and
How many are in the phone book, Robin?
about
Here.
I haven't looked lately.
There's actually a Nick Breeze in England, and I talked to him on the internet.
But he's not the one.
Huh?
He's not new. He's not our Nick Breeze, no.
No.
Somebody else's Nick Breeze.
Well, it is a British name.
Yeah, there's tons of them in Britain. There's a large. I found I was just looking for Nick Breeze, and then this guy's Nick Breeze. He's a pretty popular guy too. Yeah.
Well, we just stand out. We are English.
Yeah.
There's no Spanish or Italian or anything else. It's just English.
Yeah. coolest thing in the world.
Mixed with a little hillbilly.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Okay. Well. So, what did Grandpa Breeze do after he, did he work for Martin for some time? What did he do?
Who knows?
But he worked for
A lot of
He
things
probably worked in logistics, don't you think? That kind of thing.
could be.
Inventory, quality control, logistics type of administration type things, Nick,
Yeah.
is what I'm thinking.
Well, what's your full name?
My full
Yes.
name? Evelyn Louise Cox Breeze.
It's 4 names. Wow.
Well, I've dropped a couple of them.
Where were you born?
I was born in, what did I say? County, Kentucky. It just said what county.
Nothing.
Casey? No, that's not right.
That's the one Grandpa always talked about. Where's the National Cemetery there?
Up the road. Marion. Marion County, Kentucky.
When?
Me?
Yeah.
22. 1922.
Do you remember what day? No, like, what's your birthday?
24th of October.
1922. What did your parents do?
What did they do?
Yeah.
My father was a carpenter.
Yeah.
My mother was a hired girl.
What's a hired girl?
She would be someone that would come in and look after kids or do light housekeeping or cook, whatever you.
Okay.
And which of them was older?
Grandma.
My mother was older than my grandfather, but she had only a 5th grade education, and he had an 8th, supposedly.
Yeah.
And when the war was over and things settled down and so on, they moved to Pennsylvania and then to Ohio. I always heard, "You're smart. You can learn." So none of us ever had any trouble in school. We learned to read like that and read everything in sight. The librarian in that little town put a limit on how many we could take home. And when my sister graduated from high school, she got the opportunity to be a mother's helper. Her tuition was a scholarship, and she worked mother's helper for her room and board. And when I graduated from high school, my parents borrowed the money to pay the tuition for me to go to nursing school. And I paid them back after I graduated.
So the army didn't pay for it.
I didn't get into the army till after I was through school.
They didn't have those kind of programs yet.
Yeah.
You know, they're just getting over the depression and all. Late 30s and up into the
Tell
40s,
me
the
about-
war came along and
Grandpa going the job that with the WPA that Grandpa got and how you all fared after he left to go to work during the Depression.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, the story that we always heard was that Grandma wrote him a letter and said that she put the last 3 cents on the envelope to mail it to him. That they were out of money and just about out of food. But about that time he managed to pick up a job and had sent some. So that her letter and his kind of almost crossed. But
Hard times after that. The Depression. And then the war came along, of course, hard times were over.
Boomtown.
Everybody could make money.
Well,
You want a snack of some kind? Or don't I have some snacks in there?
good.
Yeah.